All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've begun the recording of this session. I want to welcome everybody to Grapevines to Wine, Hang Time, the lunch hour with ASEV, American Society of Enology and Viticulture Eastern Section. My name is Nathan Eason. I work with the University of Georgia Extension in Northeast Georgia, White County. And guess I'll be one of your main hosts today, but we have several guests joining us today. But before we get those folks introduced, I just want to give you a few etiquette things on our session. Not only are these sessions being recorded on Zoom and hopefully be available for viewing later, but we'll also be recording the audio file to be uploaded as a podcast for future listening as well for your road trips and when you're in the car next time. So as far as the Zoom etiquette, what we want to do is all the attendees, if you have questions, you can raise your hand icon and your name will go to the top. We'll click on you and unmute your microphone, and that way you can ask questions if need be. And after you're done, if you can lower your hand so that can open it back up for everybody else. So that is that. You can also type in the chat box, and Miss Renee is going to be helping to keep an eye on the chats and questions. But again, we'll go ahead and get kind of started. Just want to welcome everybody. This is an effort to promote ASEV Eastern Section and to tell people who we are and why we're here and what we're about. And we have a conference once a year, and that's great. And we love seeing each other and sharing stories about the year. And several of us see each other at other conferences. But as a whole, as a membership and who we represent across the nation, I thought this would be a great opportunity of let's try an online format to try to reach folks to tell our story. As well as telling information, sharing the research that's going on across the state, what's relevant, what are people seeing and out in the field or in the winery. All these things are important, and there's a lot of great work going on already across the nation. And this is maybe just another tool in your toolbox and a resource to get you introduced to folks, especially a lot of our speakers and presenters, and to get you connected nationwide. Because what I learned through ASEV is we all are actually having a lot of the similar problems and some of similar successes. So we can learn from each other through the body of knowledge, and that's why we are here. So what we're going to do is I want to go ahead and get some introductions in queue. And so we have, as far as our panelists, some board members of ASEV Eastern Section, and y'all can speak. So if you'll go ahead, and we'll start with our president for right now. Just introduce yourself, and then we'll get into more discussion later. So we'll call on Mark Hoffman to introduce himself.
All right, thanks, Nathan. So I'm not the president, I'm the chair, and of the American Society of Eastern Enology and Viticulture Eastern Section for this year. So the society was established in 1975, which is older than I am. And I'm very humbled to be the chair this year. We rotate responsibilities in the board of directors. Yeah, I work with grapes in the United States for almost 6 years, so I'm pretty green behind my ears. Did a PhD in viticulture back in Germany, and I am in North Carolina at NC State University, where we do have a substantial grape industry, believe it or not. And chairing this now for 1 year, and this whole hangout idea is Nathan's idea. Thank you, Nathan. And this will be a mix of discussions about things which we see. For example, today we could discuss some of the potential freeze impacts that we had at the eastern part in the United States, and informational sessions and educational sessions to everybody. And I don't know if you have looked over the schedule, but there is We do have some speakers lined up for next month. So we have monthly recurring meetings, and we have speakers that talk about frost damage, spray regimes, and then Justin's going to talk about the conference in Austin that will be happening in June. And this will be happening for every month until the end of the year in this format. And the Eastern section has more than 40 states, everything east of the Rocky Mountains, and also Canadian provinces as membership states in the organization. So with that, I give it to the co-chair or the vice president, Mr. Gil Gysi.
Okay. Thank you, Mark, and thanks for that bit of history. I was, Justin said I have my credential behind me, and it says Doctor of Philosophy, so I have to start with some philosophy. And what I came up with really was 3 C's of the Eastern section of ASEV, and the 3 C's stand for culture, court, and camaraderie. And I'll start with a quote from a Southern writer, William Faulkner, and he said, "The past is not dead, it's not even past." And so when you said 1975, I thought of people like Nelson Chalice and Dr. Poole at Cornell, on to Tony Wolff, and then down to some of our contemporaries like Kane Hickey. So there's that embodiment of what's gone before and what's going on now. And I think that's important that ASEV kind of tracks that. And then for court, I suggest that the scientific rigor that we're exposed to at our conferences and amongst ourselves is very important and extends down to our students. But it's a court of peers, I think, in that we come from similar circumstances and conditions. And so that's important as well. So that's part of our culture. And then finally, camaraderie. I found something, I read a liberal magazine called Harper's, and it has that Harper's Index, about the only part of the magazine I read. And I saw something, Americans spend 3 hours with friends a week, and 58% decline from 2013. So basically, we're spending a lot of time alone. So this is a good way to not spend time alone. And I think it's important. And running through all those comments, I think, is the fact that we deal with wine. And wine is not like water. It doesn't separate people. It brings them together. And that's very important for me anyway. And I hope so for everybody else on the panel and in the organization. And that's what I want to say. I do want to say Arkansas did have 150 bonded wineries at one time. And Renee can attest to the fact we no longer have 150. We probably have 5 or 6. But we have work to do. So glad to be here.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to, Justin.
Hey, let me just say, Gil, I would love to sit in your viticulture class, especially if that's how you start off class. That was deep. I'm not wearing my tie, so I'm not going to quite go there. Okay. So I'll just introduce myself at this point. My name's Justin Shiner. I'm in Texas. I am the secretary for ASEV. Renee, am I supposed to be taking notes? I'm just kidding. This is informal. That's the point of the webinar. I do believe my area of expertise is viticulture, and I'll tell you all about Texas, I suppose, when we come back around.
Sounds good. All right. Matthew Clark or Renee. We can go jump to Renee. Who matter first? Go ahead.
No. Hi, I'm Renee Threlfall. I'm at the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture, but also serve as the administrator for ASEV Eastern Section. And I do grape and wine research here in the state as well. I don't know if Nathan, did you want me to tell a little bit more about ASEV and structure, or wait for a minute?
We'll wait for a minute. We'll just kind of go through some introductions first. So thank you for that. And Matt, you're up next.
All right. Good morning, or I guess this morning for everybody. I'm Matt Clark, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Horticultural Science at the University of Minnesota, and I study grape breeding and genetics. And then I also do a bit of extension work, and all of those things overline really nicely with what Eastern Section does. And I've been really pleased to be part of this organization. when we met in Minnesota this past year, I said that this is like the family reunion you want to go to. You get to see all of your friends, you get to catch up, think about science and research, and also how that really impacts our community of stakeholders. So Eastern Section has been a great home for me as I've started my career, and excited to continue to work with everyone in the organization.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you all for being here and being a part of this introduction to, again, tell the public and tell our industry and anybody else who's interested what we're about. And to dive further into that, I will turn it back over to Renee as our administrator. She's got a lot of details about our structure, and just kind of we won't bore everybody, but we want to keep it lively, and she does a great job of that anyway. So Renee, take it away.
Thanks. Well, Mark gave a good overview of kind of what we are and how long we've been around. And but we do have to mention that, you know, there is a national organization, which is the American Society of Enology and Viticulture. And they have hundreds and maybe even thousands of members, and they're mostly represent the industry in the United States. And they have two sections. And the two sections are a Japan section and the Eastern section. And so our Eastern section, as Mark said, is just the continental divide to the right and Canada. And we have about 110 members. And we have, you know, our main mission for our organization really is to support our growing industry and also our students that we have in the industry. And we work every year to raise money for those students. And so since I think the 1980s, we've raised over 250,000 scholarships for students, and those are usually about $1,000 scholarships. So that's quite a lot of students that we may be funding. And last year we raised about $10,000. But the important thing to remember about Eastern Section is, you know, we are run by volunteers, and we don't have mostly, except for me, and everyone really contributes to help make this happen every year. And the money that we raise goes to the scholarships that we're trying to give out each year. And last year we raised about $10,000 for scholarships, and we had 7 recipients. And then other than that, we also are hosting some events like this, like Nathan is hosting, and we're going to have a conference every year. And our conference what's interesting about our conference is it moves around in a very diverse state to state. So you know, last year we were lucky enough to get to go to Minnesota and visit Matthew Clark's breeding program up there, and we'd never been to Minnesota before. So we go, and then this year we're going to be in Austin, Texas in June, from June 7th to the 9th. And so that's kind of a little bit of what we do. And I'll be glad to look at the chat and see that if we had any questions. Someone commented that they didn't know we had a Japan section. Yeah, in fact, if you go to the national conference, they actually usually attend when it's not COVID time, and they'll be there, and the chairman of their chapter will actually, he's very musically inclined, and he plays a very interesting Japanese instrument at some of the board meetings that I attend. So it's very interesting. All right, Nathan.
Perfect. Thank you for that. You know, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen real quick and show the map of what the Eastern Section is. Can everybody see that? So you know, when I first joined ASEV Eastern Section, I thought, oh, okay, the East Coast, you know, it's far from it. You know, Gill is probably the furthest west we have. Anybody else on here?
He was, but he's in Arkansas now.
Yeah,
so.
he used to be.
Okay, yeah. So but yeah, so if you look at the map, and even clearly, like I said, Providence is of Canada. So what's important for me as we go forward in these sessions is just to, you know, some people go, you know, I'm in Georgia and Mark's in North Carolina. So we got these southern states and Arkansas, you know, and Texas, you know, what's that have to do with Minnesota? And it's my hopes to, as we go forward, there are challenges. Raise your hand if everybody has trouble with Japanese beetles. I think everybody can raise their hand. And so it's not just insects, and it's other things, and we can learn from each other on what practices are being implemented. And I know that from last year's trip to Minnesota, I learned so much about how they're doing grapes up there. just intrigued me to know that they have the insect pressures. Sometimes you feel like, oh, it's so far north, the cold freezes everything. It does do that, but it apparently doesn't kill the insects, not all of them anyway. So definitely have a lot of similarities. This is supposed to be informal, and who on that we have with us on the board has been in ASEV the longest? Who can take us back? Is that you, Justin, or?
I'm actually quite young. I'm younger than I look.
I was a scholarship recipient.
I was too, and about 10
Uh,
or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So somebody
mine
who
was longer
has,
than that.
so one of Renee or Justin, y'all talk about how ASEV Eastern Section has evolved and what y'all have seen in the industry across the nation. I mean, I think that's important to kind of discuss because I got at the Minnesota, we saw that their average size of a vineyard there is 40 acres. And I thought, well, hey, they're about as small as us. And then you start talking to other states and you realize we're all kind of small-ish when compared to other crops and row crops and commodity. So as a nation, what have y'all seen like at these conferences over the years, and how has it evolved? And is it, share a little bit about that.
I'll start. I mean, one of the things I'm noting, even, definitely Texas, Ohio, Missouri, Minnesota, is a definite increase in the number of wineries, and sometimes spectacularly. I think Texas has gone from like maybe 100 to 500 in the last 10 years, number of wineries in their state.
800.
800. Okay, about 800. But so we're seeing a really great increase in states that you wouldn't normally think of as a wine producing state. So that's one of my observations I've seen. Justin?
Well, I would say over my time at Eastern Section, I've noticed my colleagues have become more gray. No, it's actually, I'm joking, but it's an organization where people I went to school with are in the organization years later, and we see, of course, some of the names we all know retire and people come and go, but it's such a close network that a lot of the people stay very closely involved, and I call or text message quite a number of the people in the organization if we see the same problems. So for example, Texas is in the south. It's hot. We think of Texas as a hot climate, but 3 out of the last 5 years, we've had winter injury in Texas. And so that's something in Minnesota, of course, they know quite a bit about. We don't have to necessarily vary vines, but, we all share the same struggles. And so Eastern Section is great in that it's very much family oriented. And even as a student, I think there's a level there of comfort where, yeah, sure, you have no problem reaching out and asking questions, whether it's you're new in your job or you're still a student. So that's one of the things I value.
Absolutely.
Can I make one more statement? I know I did not answer your question, but I would like to propose this formally on the webinar. We have never had a joint conference with our Japan chapter. We should consider that, incoming chair.
Hmm.
I think you'll put that on your list of things to do now. Something else to kind of discuss about, you
wine and
mentioned
sake, or wine and sushi.
wine and sake. I like it. That's got a ring to it.
Well, we could at least start with a virtual meeting, with them. That's
Sure.
something we should maybe try to engage.
That would be super cool. We've mentioned a lot about students and students scholarships, and we, in academia world, we look for opportunities to share scholarship. A lot of times that's for professional development. Let me get that out. And then for these graduate students, they're sharing their dissertations, their thesis, and their research, and it gives them an opportunity to go before a professional group and share. So sharing that scholarship is super important with the Eastern Section. You learn so much, and again, we put a lot of emphasis, if you come to our conferences, on these students. And as Renee said, she was a student. So we got to think about, again, for the public who might view this webinar or listen to it, why do they care? Why do they care? And the thing is, well, these are the future of your industry in your state. The students that come out of these universities that are under the direction of members such as on this board and other academia across the nation, we're training them up. They're the future. They're the ones who are going to be open-minded to trying different types of fruit wines and learning more about hybrids and how to identify ourselves as a region. They're going to be our thinkers. So I think it's fantastic that the Eastern section takes so much pride in developing these young people and exposing them to a nationwide platform. Something super exciting. Does anybody want to comment on that? Mark, I mean, I'm going to pull you in. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was about to say something anyway. So I do wanna add to the 3 C's that Gil started. And I feel, as somebody who did not go to school here in the United States and who does not have any friends in the viticulture work when he got here, you know, the ASEV Eastern section, I would say a big emphasis on the last C, the camaraderie C, because it's not, I didn't feel it was like a closed kind of organization. Even if somebody who's not from here, you can come in and make friends, and I feel like the ASEV Eastern section especially has a lot of the mission is to share your knowledge among the people who work in this industry, and that includes students. So like really to help students to find their niche in the viticulture world or in the winemaking world here in the eastern part. And there are a lot of examples, as Gil said, who were part of this association as students, and then now they're working in viticulture. Like Justin is a really good example, actually. So that's this eastern section. This organization fulfills a lot of really important roles in the United States, or in America. And yeah, so that's really what I wanted to say. So I wanted to add that sharing information between scientists is an important part of this organization, in an environment that provides a lot of positivity and a lot of camaraderie, and helping future scientists and future viticulture workers on their path is one of the really big missions of this organization as well. And everybody who works here voluntarily takes this very seriously as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I wanted to get that off my chest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would add to what Mark is saying that sometimes we often think that our graduate students are just going to become scientists, which is great, but not all of our students are PhD students. We have master's students and postdocs who participate in this process who are looking for industry positions. And I think that our organization is really well positioned for that networking opportunity, thinking about how our annual meeting includes industry workshops that are focused on ideas and issues that are focused on the state that's hosting in general, but often have a regional appeal. And those are great opportunities when our students are participating to do the networking that's required to get their name out there. And that doesn't happen more broadly in the horticultural sector. And so I think Eastern Section is really uniquely positioned to help students in job placement. And I think if we were to go capture all the students who've been members and scholarship recipients over the past even 5 or 10 years, we'd all be delighted to see where they've ended up in the industry and where they are not just in our country, but finding their way around the globe, supporting the grape and wine industry. And not only that, I see current meetings have shown that we've moved into muscadines, I think, even more, and creating new opportunities for students to engage with where the industry is going, what they think it should be, and not just listening to some of our old voices where we think it should go, but using the meeting as an opportunity in an organization to get out there, get their name out there, get a good job, and really push viticulture.
And I think this is where a great opportunity for private industry to come to our meetings to meet these students and to meet other folks, but to introduce themselves, to learn about, engage with those students and get them to share their poster, with their research on it. And that's, like you say, great networking opportunity. Another reason why just private industry should have some membership representation in the Eastern section, come to our conferences and meet these. Some of them are on their last semester, some of them are graduating. So yeah, absolutely great opportunity to expose them. Anybody else want to comment on the student discussion while we're on it? Well, it's definitely a unique opportunity, and the future is bright with some of the work that's being done. I know Mark Hoffman had a student to get a scholarship this past year. And Mark, just in a couple of sentences, share with us what your student was doing some research on, just as an example.
Well, Kyle is on the call, so you can just ask him directly.
Okay, well, let's see, Kyle, I'm going to allow you to talk. I hope you're paying attention here.
I hope so too.
All right.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Kyle, you're on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna walk away from my baby who's trying to talk over me.
Well, Kyle, just doing a quick, so you were a scholarship recipient this past year, just give us a brief synopsis, summary of what your research was about.
Yeah, so my research and what Mark and I have developed is a little novel in the sense that we've been looking at trying to manipulate different environmental conditions for nursery production of grapes. And so specifically, we've been looking at, how you can use supplemental light intensity within a greenhouse for young grapevines to increase fruitfulness, so that once new vines, whether they're new plants or transplants for a vineyard, can increase some of their returns earlier on. And we're working on some economics of that too, but we've seen obviously vineyard establishment is really costly. And so if growers can get some returns earlier, that can make the whole endeavor a little bit more profitable. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I've been working on, what we've been working on. And I guess just echoing comments that were made. I mean, I'm new to viticulture. Just within my PhD, and ASEV Eastern section has been an awesome platform to really learn, to share, work that I'm doing, but I think mainly just to connect with you all and other professors, extension specialists, the industry. And it's a nice bridge from being a student to, industry, academia, and career opportunities that, as Matt mentioned, I don't think really exists in, a lot of other areas of horticulture, broadly speaking. So very appreciative of the Eastern section.
And that's just a quick example of just some of the great work that's going on, and of course, science, right? We learn just as much about things that don't work as things that do work. And we're there to hopefully spend our grant funding dollars and tax dollars and put those to, I've always said, if I'm going to work for the government, I want to have good leverage from, and I was very proud to work for my county, for my state, because we all hope that we're bringing relevant information to the industries we represent. Thank you, Kyle. We do have a question in the audience. I guess it's Dr. Lockwood. I'm going to unmute you so you can speak. We'll give you a second.
Good morning, or I guess good afternoon now.
Well, it depends on what part of the country you're in, but yeah.
Right. Okay.
Good to have you on. What you got, Dr. Lockwood?
Okay, I had earlier on raised my hand on something that was covered, so I don't have a question right now, but I'm glad to be part of this and look forward to continuing to be involved with the meetings as we go along. Can't remember when I joined ASEV. I just finished 45 years in extension, so I've been a member of ASEV probably since about 1980. So and every year I was with the national, I was also with the Eastern region. So
Dr. Lockwood, what state are you in? Who did you spend that time with?
Well, I've been in Tennessee throughout my career, but for a few years, Nathan, of course, I had a split appointment with the University of Georgia and did some of the great work prior to Kane coming in, before Kane Hickey came. And I also got my PhD at Georgia, so I had exposure to some of the great work being done in the early years of Georgia as well.
Well, we have some legends in all of our regions. I'm sure each of you could name names of people who were the laying the foundations of the industry in each of your states. And I know Dr. Lockwood, when we first started out, I first started out in 2013, was just a wealth of information about Southern fruit growing. You know, sometimes the same issues we have with grapes is the same thing we have with apples and raspberries and blackberries and everything else. So thank you for chiming in, Dr. Lockwood. It's good to have you attend today's meeting.
Well, thank y'all.
We want to, you know, we have about 25 minutes left. One quick thing I'm going to do, I will just quickly share my screen and show the website. So hopefully everybody can see the screen here. And so we do have a website, and we do have a Facebook page where you can get information. Renee manages the website and keeps posting of when we have our conferences. You can learn about membership, what our dues and fees are associated with that. We have past information from conferences and some of the abstracts, materials. Look there, it goes all the way back to 2012. That's pretty good record keeping. I'm impressed. So if you want to know, if you want to kind of glean a little bit of information about, hey, what did they discussed at these past conferences? Here's a great place to start. Review it, and you go, wow, these are some relevant topics. And I think I will come to this year's conference. And again, we'll learn at our April meeting from Justin. He's just going to be telling us what we can expect at this year's conference in Austin, Texas in June. So this is a great place to start to kind of, again, review where we've been. And then let's see, Renee, do we have on here where we're going in the future? I don't know if we posted.
It's on the home, just go to the home button right now. Yeah.
Okay.
I go, it's at top. It's at the top. Where
Yep.
we're going. Yeah,
Yep.
that's all the information right now. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. And so there's the information about where it'll be exactly. And obviously feel free to reach out to anybody on this call for more information to discuss. We'll just briefly, if I can bring up our Facebook page. Myself and a couple others help manage this. You know, and like here I posted, Virginia had an online opportunity yesterday to join in. It's a webinar format and talking about wine acidity and chemistry. And I think that's going to be a series.
And it is a series. I attended it yesterday, and next they're going to talk about malic acid.
Okay, so for all of our winemakers out there, you know, if you want to, Virginia, East Coast, thinking about wine chemistries and things considering the winery, obviously a good starting point. And overall, this Facebook page can use to promote anything relevant. I guess we have to be somewhat careful of sponsors and private industry posts, but as far as the body of knowledge through faculty and extension, you know, we're going to try to continue to keep posting opportunities of learning through this. We'll try to post links to these recordings on here. And if there are job postings across the industry, I think we're glad to share those. You can keep that way some of our students, as they graduate, know about some job opportunities. Anything else anybody want to mention about the Facebook page? It's a Facebook page, but beyond that, we have pictures on here of our conferences. We visit. The first day is vineyard and winery tours across the state and get to taste tests and hear the stories of these regions and the types of grapes and how those taste. And so it's great to get out and ride a bus and enjoy that camaraderie and see the scenery. Followed
So
by
we had a bit of a hijack on our Facebook page last night. And I texted Nathan, and you'll never guess how I found out. Dr. Sarah Spade in North Carolina texted me and said, I think something's wrong with your Eastern Section Facebook page. There's strange photos there. And so I got Nathan on it, and I think he cleaned it up for us.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but thank you for that. You
Yeah.
know, I was got to be wary of hackers and whatnot. But you know, we have 944 likes or 1,000 followers. So when you think about making posts and looking for educational opportunities, this is you get a great following of folks on that
And
web.
people would contact you if they want to put something on there.
Yeah, that would be me and I guess Beth maybe, but ultimately, yes, and I can put my information in the chat. I'll do that right quick.
And Nathan, if we've got time, I'd like to know more about a couple of the people that are on here that I don't recognize. Ariel, I know Bill. Bill has been a member with us for a long time. Eric Staffney, Greg Flattery. You might let them, you know, they're not putting their information here in the chat. Maybe they're shy, but I'd like to know more about them and where they are.
So if anybody in the audience wants to raise their hand, I'll unmute you if you just kind of want to quickly introduce yourself.
They're going to be shy.
They might be shy.
Eric Staffney is with Extension in Mississippi State. Does a lot of Southern Pierce's disease resistant research on grapes and also muscadines. So, and Bill is retired now, but always stays a part of our Eastern Section family.
Are those being direct chatted to you?
No, I that's from my memory.
Oh, that's pretty good. I was like, where are you reading this?
No. Yeah, but so Greg is in East Tennessee, so that's interesting. Love to meet you, Greg. I don't think I recognize your name.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome our guests. And the whole point of this hang time is to kind of keep it informal as we get into our program starting next month. I'm going to pronounce her name wrong, probably. Michaela Cincinnati with Penn State University. I was going to be talking about frost damage, more so focused on the springtime, that when we get these late freezes, how do we address that? Thinking about vineyard pruning and different things like that. We all know that we can do preventative work by choosing the right varieties for the right slope and the right aspect and all these kinds of things. But I think she's going to take it to the fact of, okay, we had damage, now what? And again, everybody on here, can you nod your head if you have frost issues in your state? I think we all do. And that's crazy to think that up in Minnesota that y'all have, you're like, oh, surely they've got varieties that are going to be so late. But they're trying to scrape for every ounce of daylight during their growing season. So, and just everybody at the end of the day can have these polar freezes to come down. So it's going to be a topic that we hope you join in. It will be relevant to everybody.
Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
Before I forget, I wanted to mention something earlier, and sorry if it's a little off topic, but one of the great things about Eastern Section 2 is the collaboration among scientists leading to very successful collaborative projects like the Specialty Crop Research Initiatives, and including the Northern Grapes Project that was run out of Cornell by Tim Martinson, the VitusGen projects that were at Cornell and USDA and now at Minnesota. And Renee has a planning proposal for a new SRI on muscadines, and all of these organically developed out of the wonderful relationships through the Eastern Section, and have made the Eastern Section researchers and extension experts competitive for national funds, and have been really successful. And I think for the projects that I've mentioned, upwards of $30 million over the last 12 years or so. And so it really shows, at least at a dollar amount, the impact that Eastern Section has, and that we use this meeting as another check-in point throughout the year. And I don't think we would have successful projects without the friendships and the collaboration and the trust that comes from the culture that's been created in our community. So sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but I didn't want to forget how impactful that has been for me professionally, and also just from a research and scientific perspective.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you for sharing. You know, we keep this little program for about an hour. We have about 15 minutes. We don't want to bore the audience with excessive detail. We wanted to give you a glimpse of what ASEV Eastern Section is. I hope that some of these folks' words have inspired you to dig more deeper into our group and the knowledge that we have to offer you, and you to learn and to take back to your individual states. But let's just give a little bit of a flavor of what to expect coming forward. So Mark, you brought it up, and I kind of think it's a good idea. Let's use the next 10 minutes and talk about the polar freeze that we had. So just across, y'all shout out, what temperatures did you get in your areas?
In the 2020 freeze, we were at -18. In Northwest Arkansas, negative, I think, 8 in Clarksville, which is south of us, and that's where our fruit research station breeding program is. And we in the industry just talked to a grower yesterday, but we're still recovering. Last year we had a pretty good, this year we had a pretty good crop. We're just getting back, but the inventory is low here in Arkansas, and I maybe can speak, I don't know, to the other southern states that were impacted as well. So
what about this couple of weeks back? How cold did y'all get?
We were above freezing, so 8 degrees. So I don't think this last one it really impacted us very much. I know this year we had a drought, I think more of a drought issue in June, July, and August that really impacted muscadine production in Arkansas, like 50%, because they were developing and they were having issues with water management.
Gotcha.
Renee, I would like to formally invite you to a workshop this June on water. It's going to be called From Droughts to Floods.
I think I can attend because it's part of our conference.
I think
it's called
David,
Floods and Droughts. Welcome to Texas.
Well, that's what's interesting about Eastern Section is we have the extremes, whether it's cold to heat, droughts to floods, but we have more in common than we don't. And so at each one of our conferences, I should point out, and I'll talk about this more in detail during that webinar, but we have an industry workshop at the end that's very focused on some of the specific challenges, especially in the hosting state. So this year it will be about water.
Well, Justin, what about y'all? How cold? What are some cold temperatures that y'all seen over the years?
So I'm in the south central coastal part of Texas, College Station. It was 14. Western part of the state, where most of the acreage was in single digits. But within a week, we were back to 70 degrees. Yesterday it was 80 degrees. And people have started pruning in my area, and the sap is flowing. So the grapes think it's springtime, even though we really haven't had our winter yet. So we're hopeful, but this is what to some degree happened in 21, as some areas of the state had deacclimated and it got to single digits, and we had pretty massive winter injury.
And I know that we hit 4 degrees in North, 3, 4, 5 degrees in North Georgia. And we discussed this. We had a kind of an industry meeting the other day for some of the northern growers, and nobody's seeing visual damage at the moment. I think we'll learn a little bit more from Michaela next month on kind of bud dissection and things like that, and evaluating those to determine. I know in 2013 we got to 0 in Cleveland, and it was more towards for some reason I think it was following a warm period, because we had some sap flow like Justin was saying, and some of those vines split wide open. We're actually, and Dr. Lockwood's got his hand raised. I know he's got some thoughts on this, but I don't know that we've quite yet seen, Renee said negatives. We don't get that cold, but we we do see damage when it gets that cold here. Mark, I know you were about to comment.
Yeah, so yeah, in the Yadkin Valley, we were in the single digits, and I went there and dissected some buds, and we were well below 10% damage there, you know, even on things like Merlot or whatever, which I was like most concerned about really. And then up in the mountains got a little colder, you know, it was below zero. And funny enough, there were like some vineyards where we knew they were affected by things like viruses, and on those wines, we, at least anecdotally, they had like higher damage than the ones that were not affected, or we didn't know, you know. So we found some Merlot up in the mountains, where we had above 15% damage on the buds, you know. So, but I knew that this block was affected by some disease, you know. So, but that's what happened here. No, I didn't see any structural damage, but I also didn't go all the way up to the Boone area, which is probably the coldest area we have. I still have to do that. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Lockwood, do you have some further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we experienced anywhere from about -2 to -4 across most of the state. Actually, in the Memphis area, we're -5. But the thing that I think we need to also be aware of is that we went from 50 degrees to -5 in about 18 hours. In fact, I was in Ohio at the Ohio Produce Market Growers and Marketing Association meeting yesterday, and talking with a grower up there that said they went from 55 to -5 within a 5-hour period. Plants, even if they're healthy and fully dormant, are going to have a hard time adjusting to that. We went through a period probably 6-8 years ago, almost identical to this. The only difference being it came about 2 weeks later, the first week in January instead of the week of December 22nd. And there was widespread damage. So I'm looking at, I think our muscadines got hit pretty good. And I'm kind of wondering what the status of the vinifera's are, because the cold temperatures, if they're a healthy vine, and we had some drought stress as well. So, but if you've got a healthy vine with that kind of temperature change within a very short period of time, you still have to have damage.
Absolutely. And thank you for this. It's right. You know, not all weather events are created equal. You say, oh, we got it this temperature. It's like, well, hang on. How quickly did it drop down that, you know, to that? How many degrees did you lose in 5 or 6 hours? You know, were the vines kind of acclimated, or was there a previous warm spell, like Justin said, and they maybe had a little bit of sap flow going and for some bud development? Absolutely something to take note of. I don't want to just, we got some Southern representation here. Matt, what did y'all see? I mean, I'm scared to ask what temperatures y'all saw a couple of weeks back, but you know, y'all are somewhat used to it, but there's still extremes on a cold tolerant variety.
Yeah, actually, we're in pretty good shape. We haven't achieved the coldest temperatures that we typically do in winter, and it seems like our plants had been deacclimating okay. My lab just acquired this fall equipment to do low temperature exotherms, or where we can look at what temperatures buds are freezing at different time points across winter to look at acclimation and deacclimation. That's a lot of work that like Jason Londo has been doing when he was at USDA. And so we just started doing that for the first time here in Minnesota. And gosh, I think it was the week between Christmas and New Year's, we were down to maybe -11. So not too cold. That's Fahrenheit, and not too cold, colder than all of you all get ever. And our cold hardy stuff looked just fine. Even our stuff that's tender that we're expecting to be zone 5 cold hardy, Clarion, which is our newest variety, had 100% primary bud survival. And that actually surprised us just for where we were tracking. Vinifera, not looking so hot. Those plants clearly don't survive those temperatures, but we don't have our growers doing it. That week typically is when we get some of our coldest temperatures, as low as -25 Fahrenheit. And we can get colder, and that's through January. And unfortunately, we've been hovering around 30 for the last 15 days or so. So I'm a little more concerned about plants just being held in eco-dormancy, because they certainly have gotten the chilling hours that they need by mid-January for the varieties that we grow. So you hinted at that, Nathan, that our concern in Minnesota is that plants need to capture as much heat units as possible to ripen a crop. And so the Vitis riparia, which is the backbone for our varieties, means that when we get warmer days, the plants want to grow and then they're at risk for frost. So my concern from now until we hit, April, May is how do we keep these vines from growing too soon when they're not getting the temperature signals to keep them cool. So it's a little nerve-wracking. I say that, I look out the window and we're still under 12 inches of snow. So we've got some protection for a while.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I think that's what's great about, again, this conversation. Could we be the first ones right now, immediately after this freeze event, discussing these issues at a national level together at one time? This is the relevancy of doing this format online. Thank you all for sharing. We got 3 minutes, and I'm going to close with Kyle, our graduate student that's logged on. He had questions about, there's been increased interest over time about the industry joining the annual conference. Sometimes you get local industry based on where the conference is, determining who can attend. But and some people may not come for traveling, logistics, and things like that, and that's understandable. But absolutely. And Renee, if you want to speak on this anymore, as far as membership, we want growers and companies and different associations to become members and come to the conference. Do you have to be a member to join the conference? Are there non-membership rates? I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, so we have membership rates for the conference and non-member rates for the conference. And so a lot of the people who are non-members will just join the membership fee for the year and attend the conference. And then, to engage our industries in the state we're in, we do typically offer those people from the state a membership rate because we're in their state and they're hosting us. So lots of opportunities for growers and the wine industry, the viticulturalists to attend. I know a lot of people think it's just a research meeting, but it really is more than that. We don't do a trade show, but we have lots of different companies that'll be there and the students that could potentially be hired later on. And lots of content, I think, particularly at the workshop that would be really relevant to each state that we're in.
Absolutely. So it's definitely not just for academic faculty to be a part of this, our membership. Closing thoughts, panel. Thank you so much for joining us on our first session. We may not have the biggest audience, but we're going to record this. We hope that others will listen in later on and get introduced and enjoy our lovely conversation we have. Mark, thanks for the idea of kind of talking a little bit about an issue right here at the end. I think that was really clever to kind of give people a taste of what's to come. Future discussions, informal. We want to hear from the audience. We want to hear from our presenters. It's not going to be PowerPoint presentation, put you to sleep during your lunch hour. We have our comedic side of Gil Gleese and Justin Shiner here to keep us lively and laughing. So they're giving me the look, but it's true. These guys are great. But any last comments, panel?
I'm just here to hear Dr. Gill's philosophy, and I would recommend that we open up every webinar with some words of wisdom and encouragement.
He'll be our pontificator.
That's right.
Okay, well, in that case, since I've been officially appointed as the pontificator, I'm going to pontificate, i.e. Bruce Zocklin, when he said, viticulture and enology, you may as well teach the history of the world. And so I embrace that, and I hold it forth to all of you, and I know that you're up to the challenge.
Well, with that, we are going to close. Thank you all for attending. We look forward to rejoining at the same link that was on the flyer sent out, and we'll try to get reminders out on February 15th at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. We'll hear from Michaela Centuri from Penn State University on frost damage. So until then, y'all stay warm. We thank you, and we'll end it there.